like you mentioned, Harper, Philly and New Jersey are two teams who stand out as a couple that we were very wrong about. So, Case, why don't you start talking about New Jersey?
I think we were right in where we projected this team to be because they were projected by everyone in this spot. And it's just been an unlucky, unfortunate year for the Devils so far. Three things have really plagued this team. The first being goaltending has been atrocious this year. We thought that, Schmid was going to take another step forward. Vanacek could get back to what he was in the regular season last year, and that'd be a 1A, 1B situation. It would be all fine and dandy. Well, Vanacek has been the second worst goalie in the league for goal save above expected. Schmid was sent down to the AHL. Dawes called up and he played well at first, but then he's kind of also begun to struggle. So the goaltending has not helped this team at all. The next thing is back-to-backs. This team is 1-8-1 on the second game of a back-to-back. I don't know what is wrong with them. It's just they're a young team. You'd think they'd have young legs and be able to handle that, but it's really hurt them. And then the last thing is the biggest thing, and that's injuries. Injuries, man. Hughes, Hischier, Meier, Palat, Siegenthaler, Nosek, Miller, and Smith have all missed considerable or significant time. Hamilton is out until March. At one point, they had a combined $35.4 million in injuries between 6 players alone. That's 42.3% of the cap was injured at one time. It's been tough. Just when one guy's coming back, 2 more get hurt. Now they're down 2 players for other reasons. McLeod and Calfoot are no longer with the team. So that's another one. Howell has been missing time because of the birth of his child. That's a good news reason to miss games. But man, injuries have hurt this team. What gives me hope, despite all of these injuries and bad goaltending and kind of shoddy defense, I'll also mention, is they're still in the race. They're still there. They haven't fallen too far behind, and most of that is because of depth scoring. A lot of guys have stepped up with the injuries, taking advantage of the extra playing time they're getting and scoring lots of goals. They have eight players with double-digit goals. They were the first team in the league to do that this year. Guys like Holtz and Mercer have stepped up in a big way. Mercer had a tough start to the season and then has really found such a stride right now. It's been great. They're 8th in expected goals percentage in their games. Hughes will be back shortly after the break. Meier and Palat just recently came back. Siegenthaler and Nosek are expected back early February. This all-star game could not have come at a better time for New Jersey, and I still have hope that this is a playoff team because of the depth scoring, top guys coming back, and everything just pointing up.
Yeah, it's funny, like you mentioned the All-Star break. I feel like for some teams, you absolutely need that break to reset and start the second half of the season on the right foot. And, other teams like Edmonton is the first one that comes to mind, obviously, on their crazy winning streak. Like, they don't want to take a break at all. So it's interesting, like, which teams want the break and which ones don't. But yeah, the Devils, man, tough start to the year. I mean, I can't say start anymore because we are past the midpoint, but just with injuries, goaltending, everything, it's tough to see. But at the end of the day, like, this team isn't getting any worse over the next few years. It's not like their window is closing or anything. And it's not like they're even out of the race at all. Like, as I look at it right now, they're 5 points back of Philly with 3 games in hand, and Philly holds the 3rd spot in this division. So,
yeah,
if I'm a betting man, and I am, I would bet that the New Jersey Devils make the playoffs, and Philly probably doesn't, honestly. And obviously we'll talk about that. But when it comes to the goaltending, that was something we were pretty certain about. We thought it was going to be pretty good because Vanacek was good last year. Schmid was good last year. And I wonder if not being able to win on back-to-backs has to do with just not getting goaltending. I feel like on back-to-backs, when your team is tired, sometimes your goalie has to bail you out. And, they haven't had 2 guys who they've been able to rely on a nightly basis. So I feel like that is contributing to it. And then aside from the injuries, really, there's only a few players on this team that you're really wanting more from. You mentioned Mercer had a really tough start to the season. He's been good as of late, so that's been a good sign. Holt, a guy who you expected to be a mainstay, well, he's only played like 20 some games, and he's been great in those games. So that's incredible to see. And then a guy like Timo Meier and Andre Palat, like those two players, I know Meier has had some injuries and is adjusting to a new team. I guess Palat is too, but those are two guys you probably want more from. But other than that, even though we were clearly wrong in the standings for New Jersey at the midpoint of the season, I could still see them finishing top 3 by the end of the year when it's all said and done, because Jack Hughes back fully healthy, like the dude on a full season's pace is he's a 120 point player. Yeah, 130 point player. So there you go.
Yeah, I've got to say that Jesper Bratt, like as a replacement for the All-Star game, he has just replaced Jack Hughes in this time that he's been gone, because Bratt's been absolutely phenomenal. And
yeah,
there's times that I just don't think he has, I don't know how to say it, like his stamina. He has such an engine that he doesn't ever seem tired, and he's going full tilt at all times, and he's so fast and so shifty. It's going to be fun to watch him. I think that whoever drafts him is going to get a good player in 3-on-3 hockey.
Oh yeah. And I wanted to say something else too. Like you mentioned that the defense has been a little shoddy. Just looking at some of the numbers, they're in 15th in the league in terms of expected goals against. So they're right basically in the middle of the pack, but we know from last year, this team was, I think, top 5 in both expected goals for and against. So they were good offensively and defensively.
You're missing your top pair. Like that's hurting. Graves, you're definitely missing him.
That's who I wanted to bring up, Graves and Severson.
You're not missing Severson for defense at all. I mean, look what he's doing in Columbus.
True. But another veteran who can control the play, I think.
But what I'm getting at is you have Nemitz at 19 years old playing on the top pair. Well, he was until Siegenthaler got hurt. And then, Luke is playing a lot of time. He's been phenomenal. But then at times you've had Miller hurt. At times you've had Smith hurt. Kevin Ball was out briefly. Like it's just, you can't keep consistency when everyone is constantly in and out of the lineup on the back end. You can tell that they don't know where their D partner is at all times. They're missing assignments because they're trying to cover for a phantom player. And, there's some guys that just haven't been themselves. John Marino struggled at the beginning of this year. I thought he was their best defenseman last year. Siegenthaler was a turnover machine in the first 2 months of the year, but I mean, he started to get better before his injury. So the back end's definitely not helping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I especially when that back end is banged up, it looks really thin back there, and certainly it just comes down to injuries and not getting saves. You can sum up this season so far for the New Jersey Devils as we've talked about. I thought that Schmid was maybe going to get a long-term extension, before the start of the season. I know that was being reported around a little bit, and unfortunately he's struggled this year, but he's still a young kid, and goaltending is voodoo, as we know, from one year to the next. So could certainly see Tom Fitzgerald, who was just given an extension and promoted to president of hockey ops along with his GM title. As you know, Case, I could certainly see him, going out and getting a goaltender at the deadline. They've been tied to Markstrom, Gibson, Jake Allen. I think they looked at earlier in the season, so we'll see what happens there. But I would still bet that this team will be a playoff team when push comes to shove. And I think that with all things considered, missing your top defenseman and your top forward, and with the goaltending struggles and other injuries, they've done pretty good to, kind of weather the storm a little bit here. Case, the one question I have for you, man, is about Jack Hughes. And, it seems like for a young player, he's been banged up a lot so far in his career. Does that concern you at all?
It doesn't really concern me because the injuries aren't like Connor Bedard's, or he's not getting laid out or hurt from big hits. It's like kind of fluky, weird stuff where like he falls on his wrist weird, or like he it bends his knee weird. It's a lot of weird injuries, and it's nothing like concussions or like a Achilles or anything that's going to just keep coming back, a shoulder injury. So I'm not overly worried about it at the moment. It's been kind of freakish stuff, but if it keeps happening, I'm going to start to freak out.
Yeah, fair enough. And again, Nemec has been great. Like, it's been really good to see him take the jump, and that certainly isn't a surprise. Chad, you want to jump in there again? Yeah, well, absolutely.
On Nemec, people around the league are noticing that he's playing and getting an opportunity. Like, what's his name? Jiricek in Columbus specifically called out Nemec, saying guys in my draft are playing and I'm not. So I thought that was interesting. Nemec is just a guy existing, and he gets like called out by Jiricek in a friendly way, obviously, but it wasn't meant to mean anything.
Yeah, I heard that, but I'm like, Nemec is also the second overall pick.
Yeah.
Like, he's supposed to be pretty good.
I know. But Jiricek was what, 5th that year? So, like I get, they're in like the same tier, I think, or like at least pretty close. But anyway, that wasn't even what I was going to say. Where was I going with this? That Jiricek comment just got me off track. But, actually, yeah. So Harper mentioned that the trade deadline, maybe going out and getting a goalie. Case, what do you think they should do at the deadline? Do you think a goalie is in the plans, a defenseman to replace Dougie Hamilton, and maybe Hamilton comes back in the playoffs, or what?
I don't think you're replacing a defenseman. I think that when the other small injuries come back, you've still got a pretty good decor here. Nemec is actually filling that hole pretty well. And then on top of that, you still have Marino and Miller down the right side, as well as Brendan Smith, who can play both sides. Santeri Hataka has actually been a great call up so far. He skates really well. He's really good in his own end, and there's a lot of depth there. So I'm not really worried about getting a defenseman, especially when you're going to pay an arm and a leg at the deadline. But goaltending is 100%. I think that they're going to go out and get a goalie, and it's an interesting development that they're closely linked with Adam Henrique now, because John Gibson is there. So maybe that's a big time trade coming down the pipe.
Yep.
I don't think it makes sense to get a $6 million man or whatever Gibson makes, but
how many years does he have?
I'm not sure. I would have to look it up, but
is
him and Markstrom, like, it's
after this one?
I don't know. We've seen like this year, like the reason why we were so wrong about this team and others in this division is because goaltending is just like so tough to predict. And these guys who make so much money, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, Gibson's at 6'4", I believe, and Markstrom is at 6. And I believe it's another 3 seasons for Gibson after this one. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I don't know what the right answer is. The team, New Jersey, is not really in much of cap trouble for another 2 years. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. I could see them taking that on and making it work, or working some things around in the future here.
Yeah, there's something to be said also about just having peace of mind going into the playoffs, having a goalie like can shoulder the load, so.
Now they can fudge around the LTIR because Dougie's on there now, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, true.
By the way, Kay, quickly before we move on from New Jersey, Case, did you see that Utica Comets player, Gambarella, or whoever it is that scored a goal off his face?
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah, Graham Clark just friggin' ripped it off his face.
Yeah.